There are many wonderful things about spring. Everything greens, but one of the most beautiful things is how quickly wildflowers come up and start to bloom and give us such beautiful color in our gardens. I'm visiting with Andy Sessions at Sunlight Nurseries in Andersonville, Tennessee. She has a mail order operation here, also in a wonderful location. And Andy, the selections of plants that we've got here, I know that there are certain rules. If I'm a novice and I want to start a wildflower garden, according to what we've assembled, what would I do first to ensure success?
Well, first you have to understand what your site is like. Is it shady? Is it sunny? Does the soil hold good moisture? Is it lousy, dry soil? Is it sandy? Those are all things that are very important. But gardening with wildflowers is just like gardening with any other perennial. You have to prepare your site and choose the right plants for that site.
What is the opportune time to plant these wildflowers?
Well, the best time really to plant wildflowers, along with most other perennials, is in the fall, early fall. However, it is fine to plant all these now. It just means that you're going to have to pay more attention to watering and the care that you would normally give your flowers during the summer if it gets dry. Mm-hmm. In the fall, however, you give them more time to get established before they have the stresses of drought the following year.
Yes, well, and so you're saying that a plant likes to wake up where it went to sleep.
That's a very good way to put it. That's easy to remember.
Okay, well, with those things in mind, I think we should tell people, if you want to plant now, you may, but if you like to prepare that site and get ready to get some plants in the fall, then maybe they need to get a pencil and paper. And as we go through this selection that we've pulled from your vast selection out there, they might want to jot down some names, right?
Right.
Okay, well, why don't we start up here at this corner?
Okay, well, this is the blue woodland phlox, and it is common in our moist woods in the area. It's easy in the shade where you've got pretty good soil. If it's really dry, probably not your best bet. But the nice thing is that it spreads by seed when it's happy. So you start with one and you're probably going to have many in years to come. It also attracts the early butterflies, so it's a good early butterfly flower.
Okay, now is this in the same family?
Yes, this one is a creeping type of woodland phlox that happens to be a purple-blue color. This is another creeping woodland phlox. All three of these like the shade. This one is more a clump former. These two tend to spread by runners, so they make good ground covers in shade and good soil.
Well, let me ask you a question about this shade. You know, when we look at our barren trees now, and some of these wildflowers are popping up underneath them, well, they're actually in full sun now. So after they've bloomed and the leaves start to get on the trees, then you don't have to worry that they're getting sun now.
That's correct, and that's a good observation. Most of these things are flowering out here when it's sunny now because the leaves on the trees aren't out. They can handle that. They spend their time after they're flowering in the shade, growing bigger.
And some of these also, there's no foliage once they've bloomed and the seed pod is formed. I know that this flock will keep foliage, but let's move on to this right here.
Well, this is the wild columbine, and it is native to rocky woodland, sort of drier places in our area. You'll see it on cliff faces, pretty much slopes in the shade. It is evergreen though. It does keep its leaves year-round. This is one that attracts early hummingbirds, so that's an early butterfly plant. This is an early hummingbird plant. It also spreads by seed, so you're going to have many more of these if you start with one or two.
I have that prolifically in my garden. Okay, now this right here.
Okay, this is the old-fashioned bleeding heart. It is not a native plant, but it is a great plant for the wildflower garden. Blooms this time of the year on into June. After blooming, this one's going to go dormant and disappear. It disappears completely to the ground when it starts to get drier. People see this and they always say, Oh, my grandmother had this plant.
no.
That's why it's called the old-fashioned bleeding heart. It's been around for a long time.
Yes.
Here's a white form of it. Usually you see it in pink, but sometimes you get a white, and that is a pure white flower. It's beautiful.
Now, is this a little bit more delicate? Is it a little bit more difficult to establish?
This one's a little slower to grow, a little more difficult to establish. Yes. Oftentimes the white forms of other colored flowers are harder to grow, to get started.
Okay, I'm going to go to the front over here. Now, I know that's not a native nor a wildflower. What is that?
This is a Japanese version of our jack-in-the-pulpit, and this one is really a collector's item. This is Erycema sakukianum. It's called Japanese cobra lily. Great plant for the shade and moist soil. It comes up at this time of the year, does its thing. It's probably going to get 12 to 18 inches tall with leaves that may be 18 inches wide. And again, by midsummer, this one's probably going to disappear and go dormant.
How important is it to remove debris from your wildflower gardens? If you don't take off twigs and leaves that fall in the autumn and winter, is that a problem?
Well, it all depends on your trees and the amount of leaves. Of course, if you're blowing your leaves off your yard into your garden, that's a problem. But you look at the woods, and the woods have sometimes several inches of leaves and duff, and in the long run, that is very good for your soil. However, in our wildflower gardens, we tend to expect them to do maybe better than they're doing out in the wild.
Yes.
So you can, for instance, fertilize in a wildflower garden. You don't have to, but you can to encourage growth. But we recommend you leave as much leaves or natural covering as you can, so long as it doesn't get in the way of new plants coming up the next year. And you just have to judge that individually.
And the aesthetics of keeping it naturalized looking enhances the fact that these are wildflowers.
That may be the look you want.
Yeah.
It may be that you want wildflowers in your shady border in front of your house,
Right. Now,
where mulch is something you might want. But before we get to that, here's the Virginia bluebells, which is another spring bloomer that comes up and does its thing now, and by June it's going to disappear. And this one will naturalize in your woods, in your woods with good moist soil, and it can form acres, well, in the wild, maybe not in your garden, but acres of beautiful blue flowers.
I have this in my garden, and it's very special because a friend, an elderly friend, gave it to me, only one plant, and she said, I don't give this to everybody. I'm going to give you one. She has now passed away, and like you say, my hillside is covered.
It's beautiful.
And my bluebells from Eunice.
Beautiful.
Okay, now how about the baptisia?
This is baptisia, or blue wild indigo, and it blooms in late spring. It may get several feet tall. The flowers are just now starting to come up. They look like
I think a sweet pea.
sweet pea flowers, yes. And it's typically blue, but it may tend towards purple or yellow. They've been hybridizing them, so there's lots
I've seen
of colors.
The white one.
White?
Isn't the white one native? Or?
Yes, there's one called the white wild indigo.
Yeah.
But this is a long-lived, big perennial. Can get 3-4 feet tall and 3 and 4 feet wide. It'll be there forever in sunny, dryish places. Gorgeous.
I won't tell it, but I have a nice story about one of these too. Okay, now let's move to this pretty dianthus.
Dianthus, or pinks, great ground cover for sunny, dry places. It's very fragrant. I wish you could smell it through
Like
the camera.
carnation.
Smells great. It'll form a mat, and this will repeat blooming if you shear off the old flowers.
And the blue textured foliage is, just look how this fuchsia color pops. The yellows and the blues and the pinks. It's just, this is a unifying color, isn't it?
It's very
is
easy
for
to work
me.
with that color.
Okay, right here, this is a familiar looking face.
This is the celandine poppy, and it's another spring bloomer. It's probably one of the easiest wildflowers to start with. We recommend this for beginners that have shade and average to good soil. It will form a clump 18 inches tall and 18 inches wide, so it gets bigger than it is right now.
And I see that seed pod right
It
there.
spreads by seed. This seed pod gets bigger and hairy, and it'll burst open in June, and fling its seeds everywhere, and the next year you should have seedlings.
Another reminder about pre-emergence in our gardens that we want. There are a lot of things we don't want, but what we do want are all these things that naturalize from seeds.
Right.
Okay, this is a cutie.
This is the dwarf-eared coreopsis, and it's an easy ground cover for light shade. Doesn't get much taller than that. It is evergreen, so it keeps these green leaves year-round.
Now, the coreopsis is a native plant, but this is a hybrid?
No, this is a native. There are many different species of native coreopsis.
Oh.
This is one that's low-growing and blooms early. Most people think of coreopsis as summer-blooming, sun-loving perennials.
Yeah.
But this is a spring-blooming, more shade-liking
I can
perennial.
see this in a little hypertuba pot.
It's easy. There's many uses for that. With the flowers at maturity, it may be a foot tall, so quite short.
We're down to the front row.
Spiderwort. Late spring bloomer, gets a foot or so tall, spreads. This
Yes,
one,
I know.
you give it some room because it will spread, but that's a beautiful color.
Now, this also, doesn't this fade away, the foliage, after it's bloomed? Does it?
They can get tired, and if any of these look tired and you think they're not supposed to be going dormant, and you need to know which ones like this should go dormant, if they look tired, just whack them off.
Yeah, I have done it.
Give it a little haircut and let it
I
rejuvenate.
have to say, I've done it, hoping it doesn't come back. This right here, I have these, and I love this.
That's a hardy orchid, not a native plant. It's from China, but it's beautiful in the wildflower garden. It's going to get a foot or so taller, spreads slowly. It can grow as a rock garden type plant or in average soil. It's not too particular. Slowly spreading clump.
Okay, now,
And foam flower.
isn't that pretty?
Every spring woodland wildflower garden should have foam flowers. There are clumping types, which this one is, and there are creeping types. Most of them have white flowers. This one's got a pink tint to it, and this one is a variety called pink brushes. Some have all green leaves, some have got splotches of color in the leaves. There are subtle variations in the foam flowers, but very easy for shade and average soil.
And you know, is this one have an evergreen clump?
Yes, it is evergreen.
Okay,
That
like
one is
the
evergreen.
hookers.
Mhm.
Okay, I used to get these mixed up. What's it's a hooker?
Easy
this
to
is a
mix them
foam
up.
Flower. Well, Andy, there are many things out there in those greenhouses that you've now unveiled. Let's put it that way, because you've been waiting for a day like today, and now we can find your gardens listed on the website.
Right?
Okay, well, I appreciate your end of the day with a cool breeze, and it's obvious that if someone wants to know about wildflowers, how to do it, and what you've done wrong, then I think they should look up Andy Sessions at Sunlight Nursery.
Well, thank you.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel, and like us on Facebook.